At that time, someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns, build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods, and I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The story is told of a family of a very hard-working and loving father and mother and their little son, who actually went to school with some wealthy kids. Noticing his own poverty compared to them, he came home telling his mother, "When I grow up, I will get a good job, and then we will be rich." His mother held him close to her heart and said to him, "My son, we are already rich. Someday we will have money." Many people mistake financial wealth alone for true riches. And when that happens, this can warp our soul, can warp our values. And so, we know only true from life, some family or the other, sometimes one's own, which has fought over inheritance after the death of their parents. Because when the property is divided, very often the family is divided. Children who are born from the same mother and father fight each other and become strangers to each other. They refuse to talk to one another and then do not permit their children, their cousins, to even mingle. And so greed can soon destroy the family. No wonder Jesus warns in today's gospel text, "Take heed, beware of covetousness," of greed. Because greed and this kind of an ambition to have more and more and more money leads to a kind of idolatry which destroys the relationships with others. And this is precisely the problem that was brought to Jesus by someone from the crowd. He has a strained relationship with his brother, and with the separation of property, he hopes that separation for them will be final. So under the mask of the cry for justice, this man wants to ask Jesus to tell and to call out his brother. It's as though he's shooting from the shoulder of Jesus. But Jesus is not going to give in to his game. This brother thinks that with a greater abundance of goods, a greater abundance of riches, he probably thinks that the more he has, there will be more contentment, more happiness, more security. And you get some people who do think like that. And this can warp the way one looks at life, the way that looks at people. It grips them in such a way that they seem to lose their way. Now, in asking Jesus to tell his brother, this man wishes to justify his position and to justify his stand. But Jesus refuses this role that he's trying to thrust on Jesus. And as most parables, Jesus takes him and turns the perspective of this man. Jesus, as I said, does not fall into his trap. For him, now Jesus tells the parable of what we call the rich fool. Now, Jesus not only condemns greed, but what he does, he takes this as a teaching moment. So he's not only content with telling him what is wrong, he's opening the path to tell him what is right. And in that, he gives us a wonderful teaching model. Because sometimes when we have to correct what is wrong, we also have to gently and firmly indicate paths that are right, especially as teachers and especially as parents. Now, what can we learn from this parable? One of the things we are called to be stewards. And therefore, riches are not bad in themselves. That's important for us to know. Because when we know that riches are not bad in itself, we see how riches can truly help in the good use of them, in the development of society and of the church. We at RMC, the Redemptorist Media Center, know only too well that it's thanks to the generosity of people who contribute with their financial resources, with their time, with their talents, we are able to run this ministry. And the more of this generosity that comes to us, the more we are able to do, and the greater we will be able with our outreach. And for that, we are truly grateful. So resources, whether it's money, whether it's talent, whether it's skill, whether it's time, are wonderful ways for the growth of the kingdom. They're good. So the riches in themselves are not bad, because if it were not for riches, the kingdom would not have grown. But there is a danger, and that's where the danger is. When we have so much reliance on wealth, we live under the illusion that we are self-sufficient or that we are quite islands. We don't need others because we are self-sufficient in ourselves. And the moral danger is being rich is that of self-sufficiency. We read in the first letter of St. Paul to Timothy in chapter 6 verse 10, he says, it is the love of money, not money, which is the root of all evil. And that is why we see what greed can really do. For St. Luke, right through his gospel, wealth has value when it is used at the service of others. We are not masters, but merely stewards of the wealth that is there in our possession. We need money, but it is to be used for the good of others, not accumulated, not hoarded, but the sake of those who lack it. So, what are the dangers and the temptations that we need to address that come to us from the text? I'd like to highlight for you briefly 3 important points. One is the attachment to money. Second is to be self-centered. And the third is to have a false security in our riches or wealth. First, we take a quick look at the attachment to money. You know, God invites us through the pages of the Bible to love persons and to use things. The tragedy happens is when money becomes our God and we use persons because we love things. And so when a person is attached to money, he or she destroys themselves or the others, because it's not money, but the attitude that we have towards it is what we call greed. And this greed can make you sick because you think of everything in terms of monetary resources and how it will benefit you. As cynic once said, such a kind of a person knows the price of everything but the value of nothing. It's interesting that Jesus, who was rich, emptied himself and became poor. This is the path of God, the path of humility. Greed does the exact opposite. You who are poor and human try to make yourselves God, because when you have money and power in your hand, this is how people sometimes act. They expect the rest of the people to bow down before them. That's the first danger that we need to avoid. That is attachment to the wealth or the money we have. The second is this money or the wealth that we have can make us self-centered. The rich farmer is a fool, as the word addressed to him in the parable, is not because he is wealthy or because he saves for the future. Not at all. He is a fool because he appears to live only for himself. When the rich man talks in this parable, it's interesting. He's talking to himself, and the only person he refers to is himself. The rich fool discusses and dialogues with himself, not for others, because his wealth isolates him and alienates him. He's so self-centered, so egoistic. Everything is I. He's an I specialist, and everything is me and mine. And that's how we see. Just listen to the words that were said over there. He says, and he said, I will do this. What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, he's so obsessed with himself. Everything is revolving around him. He can only think of himself, of my crops, my barn, my grain, everything. The relentless use of the first person pronouns, I, me, mine, is a preoccupation with himself. He's not a thought he's giving to help others. No expression of gratitude for the bumper harvest he's got, and no recognition for the role of God. This person has become a victim of one of the most popular false gods, the unholy trinity, which is I, myself, and me. That's the second point. The third is the false security. Again, the farmer is not foolish because he has made provision for the future. He is foolish because he believes that by his wealth, he can secure his future. As he says, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. So the farmer is called fool not because of his wealth or ambition, but because of the approach that he has of thinking the limited things have unlimited value. The rich farmer will have to learn soon that he cannot take not even an iota of it when he dies. Like the rich farmer, we might think we have all the wealth and the possessions that will make us secure. But no amount of wealth can protect us from a disease or from a tragic accident. No amount of wealth can keep our relationships healthy and our families from dividing. In fact, wealth and property too often can divide families. No amount of wealth can make our lives secure with God, because Jesus repeatedly warns that it comes in the way of one's relationship with God. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, this farmer could have said to himself, I've got so much. I will give it to others in need. I will reach out for those who are struggling and suffering. No, but what does he say? I will pull down and make bigger barns and bigger resources all at my disposal. And Jesus is clear. He says, be careful and stay away from all kinds of greed. It is dangerous because greed gives us a false security. Because we're told that finally, fool, this night your soul is required of you. This very night. If these words are addressed not only in the parable, but to you and to me, and if this night you and I are called to give an account of our lives, I wonder what it would be. How would we respond to God for all the gifts and the resources that we have been graced and that we have been blessed with? What would change for us? Would we be selfish or would we be selfless? Will we be self-centered or would we be other-centered? If you and I were to die tonight, what would change in the manner in which we live? What would I do differently? What unfinished business would I have to attend? Because the manner in which we live will certainly be the manner in which we die. And the meaning that we bring to our life will be the meaning we give to our death. Not as a means of fear or terror, but of being at peace with oneself and being at peace with God. Let us therefore examine our lives, so that we will not be found to be fools in the sight of God, and that we will not get distracted by things, but focus on Jesus, who is our treasure, and that the wealth we have will be offered for the service of others, to make this world a better place, and to build up the kingdom of God. I pray for this grace for you and for me.